Kent again.
Madam Contest Master, fellow test masters, and honored guest. Before I commence my speech for this contest, I'd like to introduce you to prop number 1. George Clooney. Yes, the George Clooney. He really is hot in person, isn't he? Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, is the process of performing interventions when there's been a heart attack or cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest, by definition, is the cessation of the heart beating, even if temporarily. Symptoms of cardiac arrest include unresponsiveness, no pulse, or lack of breathing. Cardiac arrest is the leading cause of death in the United States. In 2015, the CD said that 326,000 people had a cardiac arrest at home. 10% of those victims of cardiac arrest did not survive. If family members knew how to initiate CPR, members could be saved. CPR, by definition, is rescue breathing or chest compressions. To begin CPR, assess for responsiveness. George, are you okay? If there's no response, yell for help. Help! I think George had a heart attack. If no one responds to your pleas for help, call 911. Yes, 911. I have someone at my house who's had a heart attack. My address is 624 Diana Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina. The victim's name? George Clooney. Yes, the George Clooney. Yes, he really is hot in person. The purpose of calling 911 is in case the victim, in this case George, should need advanced cardiac life support, such as defibrillation or medications, the EMS or emergency medical services can deliver those. But while you are waiting for EMS, it's very important that you initiate CPR. First thing to do is to begin chest compressions. To perform chest compressions, place the heel of your hand closest to the victim's head on the bottom part of the breastbone. Place your other hand on top. Press down at least 2 inches at a rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute. I find it helpful to think of a very fast-paced song to keep that rate. Stay alive! Stay alive! Stay alive! You get the picture, right? When you compress down, don't press harder than 2.4 inches. If you do, injury might result. But don't worry. I'm sure George would rather have a cracked rib than be dead. If after 30 compressions, the victim is still not responding, assess for breathing. To assess for breathing, put one hand on the forehead, the 2 fingers under the chin. This is called the head tilt chin lift method. This helps to open the airway. Assess for a pulse. To assess for a pulse, place 2 fingers on the victim's carotid artery. Go ahead, practice yourself. Practice feeling your pulse. Do you feel that? Make sure you don't press 2 fingers at the same time, otherwise you're actually preventing blood flow from going from the heart to the brain and back. If you do not feel a pulse, then you're going to do your rescue breathing. Pinch the nose, open the mouth, and give a rescue breath. As you're giving the rescue breath, see if the victim's chest is rising and falling. If there's no rising and falling of the chest, tilt back again and try again. Once you have gotten 2 breaths successfully in, continue to do compressions, 30 compressions to 2 rescue breaths for at least 5 cycles or 2 minutes until George starts breathing or until the EMS gets there. In 2014, I actually had to give CPR to a friend. My friend Steve and I were running in a local race in Charlotte, and after we crossed the finish line, there were vendors all over the parking area. They were giving out free lip balm, Gatorade. Even Outback was there giving out free samples of steak. My friend Steve was like, me man, me have meat. So he took his free sample of steak and began chewing and talking to me at the same time. He unfortunately began to choke and grabbed his throat. And I said, Steve, are you okay? And he became bluish gray and his eyes were bugging out just like Daffy Duck in the Looney Tunes cartoons. And he began to get weak and passed out right there in the parking lot in front of me. So I immediately checked to see if he had a pulse. He had no pulse. So I began chest compressions. I did 30 chest compressions and I yelled, someone please help. And I'm still doing chest compressions. No one responded yet, so then I did my rescue breaths. Someone finally came to help. Guess what his name was? George. It wasn't as hot as my George. His name was George. So I was getting tired. I said, George, you take over compressions. Let me do the rescue breaths. So I gave Steve a breath. And another breath. He began to come to. He started pinking up. And he sat up. He was in good shape. Steve was fine. Then the ambulance came. And they looked at him for about 10 minutes. And they wanted to take him to the hospital. But Steve said, no, I'm cool. I'm fine. I'm okay. As a matter of fact, he's more than okay right now. He's my husband. Sorry, George. Charles Swindoll once said, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react. I hope that after this speech, if you have a family member, even if it's your mother-in-law, that you will react appropriately. I'm sure Steve is glad that I did. Until he gets this month's visa bill.